What do you do when you're an adult and you still feel anger and resentment towards your toxic mother? So when I was younger, I felt a lot of resentment towards my mom, and it stemmed from a place of feeling like unfair things had been done to me. I felt like there was a bitter aftertaste in my mouth that wouldn't go away. I wanted to have peace and be happy. Nowadays, I can honestly tell you that feeling has gone away. I actually feel in control of the aspects of my life that I can control. I don't feel like I'm living an unjust existence that is imposed upon me. And I have all the boundaries I need with regards to my mother. But how did I do this? And if you're in a similar situation, what do you need to understand about the anger and resentment that you might still feel as an adult? I just want to make it clear that everything I say in this and other videos is applicable to narcissistic mothers and fathers, even if the examples I give are of just one or the other gender. Now, to be clear, there's a lot of really horrific experiences that some people have had that their mothers were directly involved in, and that would quite naturally generate some anger. As a therapist over the past 10 years, I have heard some horrible stories. I've heard stories of parentification and emotional enslavement, but I've also heard stories involving people having to witness someone being killed in front of them, or people even being forced to kill their own pets. So there's a huge spectrum of experiences that people can have that can quite naturally create a lot of anger. So in this channel, we'll talk a lot about core unmet needs and how a lot of what impacts us as adults stem from those core unmet needs. Feelings of worthlessness, emotional deprivation, isolation are all experienced internally as repetitive emotional states, and also externally as repetitive self-sabotaging situations in our lives. Now, I was resentful about a number of different things because I thought certain decisions had been made for me and I was being negatively impacted as an adult. One of the things that happened is that I stopped going to school when I was 12 years old. This impacted a number of things. It made me feel completely inept as someone who was growing up and was about to move out and have to deal with the adult world. Who is going to hire someone who stopped studying when they were 12? And also, it impacted my social skills. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know how to talk to people. And I felt weird and inferior and inadequate in social situations. I also felt overwhelmed by my mother's issues, like I couldn't escape from the chaos that she herself generated in her life, even though I didn't bring her my own problems. And all of this generated resentment. It felt like it was unfair. I didn't want to live a life full of anger and bitterness, so I did a simple mathematical calculation. If my anger comes from things that I felt were taken away from me, then I'm gonna find ways of giving myself those things in my life now. So I went back to school and I got my GED, and then I got my bachelor's degree in college. I have to be honest with you, I don't always think traditional education is the best way to go, and I've had a lot more success in my life following my own educational path and being an entrepreneur. But getting my GED was much more about taking my power back and feeling like I had influence over my life, and that I didn't need to just be this person that hadn't even had the choice to drop out of school and that didn't have a future for her. So I invested in that because of those emotional needs. And when it came to the lacking social skills for me, and when it came to feeling overwhelmed by my mother's issues, I eventually prepared myself for over a year studying about narcissistic mothers and the way that could impact somebody and the options I had in terms of levels of contact I could have with her. And I opted for no contact. And even though that was difficult and it generated a lot of guilt, it certainly did get rid of all of her chaos. Now, all of these things were hard. It was hard to go back to studying. It was hard to set that type of boundary with my mom. It was hard to force myself to get social skills. But it literally erased the feeling of injustice that I felt. The bitterness, it completely went away. Now, mind you, I don't know what you're dealing with, and it's okay to be angry. What I'm trying to transmit is that we oftentimes have more power in dealing with anger than we may think. Essentially, the problem with not dealing with the anger is that not only is it uncomfortable to be bitter, but we also might develop really maladaptive coping mechanisms that are self-sabotaging. So you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot because of a decision someone else made for you. Some people who feel a lot of resentment become very demanding of those that they interact and have intimate relationships with. And this can feel quite unfair and overwhelming to those people because they also weren't the ones who caused their problems and don't think it's fair that they should have to deal with our anger and our frustration for having suffered earlier on in life. And this ends up pushing people away And the last thing we want is to sabotage our relationships. And then when people go away, it creates another cycle of unmet needs and feeling wronged and getting angry and resentful. Other people just shut people off because they don't expect their own needs to be seen or validated or met. They don't trust anyone. But this too will create a cycle of further isolation and emotional deprivation. Other people become a full-blown bully and they push people down, they belittle them, they scare them, they annihilate them. It's a strategy so people get the message that they can't mess with them. And that's a way of protecting their most vulnerable parts. But then you're seen as abusive, you harm the people you love, and it creates another cycle of unmet needs. Hey guys, if you're getting any value from this video, then download your free PDF, Break the Chains, 10 Steps to Stop Your Narcissistic Parents' Control. You can find the link in the description box. Also, smash that subscribe button because that helps the algorithm reach more people who also need this information. The second thing about feeling angry and resentful is that we spend our whole lives consumed by this sensation and reacting to everything that we didn't get, instead of directing all of that energy to building things that would actually provide a wonderful life that we actually want to experience. So what can you do? You want to get clear on what you're actually angry about. You want to reinvest that energy into meeting those needs in a practical way now. I want to pause here and I want to acknowledge that, like I said earlier on in the video, there could be a lot to be angry about. And I'm not here to judge you about your experience. I'm here to invite you to consider whether you could be giving yourself a better life by reinvesting that energy into the actual experiences that you want to have. Because if it already sucked having those things be done to you in the past when you were a kid or a teenager, doesn't it also suck to still be reacting to those things now that you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old? I know it's not something that maybe you were very aware of, but you're becoming more aware of it now, and I want you to give yourself a better, healthier life. So let's look at how we can do this step by step using a fictional character, Stephanie. So growing up, Stephanie was raised by a mother that was consumed by her own personal drama. She had a list of failed relationships, health scares, and a bunch of personal crises. Stephanie was generally ignored unless she was being useful somehow. And the way that shows up in her life now is that if she feels that people are ignoring her, she gets furious because she feels invisible and disposable. What she's angry about is that her mother never really saw her, except for when she could be useful as a helper. She's angry that she was forced into a caretaker role instead of being taken care of. And there's a few unmet needs behind that anger, such as the need for validation, the need to be seen, noticed, and valued for who she is, the need for secure attachment. Stephanie wanted to feel that she belonged and mattered to someone, and the need for boundaries because she didn't want to be engulfed by her mother's constant problems. When Stephanie thinks about it, Stephanie realizes that nowadays she actually wants to build visibility in healthy places. So she joins classes, groups, and communities where she can express herself and be seen. She does boundary work, where she learns how to say no even though she feels guilt. And then she makes better choices about how she's going to invest her energy. She also learns how to name and claim her needs. She learns nonviolent communication. And she tells people that are important to her when she needs attention, when she needs acknowledgement, without aggression, passive aggression, or without guilt-tripping people. And she stopped just sitting around waiting to feel noticed and feeling invisible. So anger often stems from a feeling of powerlessness against something being taken from you in a way that feels unfair, or being subjected to something that was incredibly painful and made you feel vulnerable, exposed, and abused. Anger can be connected to a lot of grief about the life that could have been if those experiences hadn't happened in the first place. Even though it's completely normal to react with anger to such experiences, I don't want you to spend your life reacting to anger. Do you think that the wisest part inside of you, the part of you that wants to give you much healthier experiences, do you think that it wants you to just keep reacting to things out of anger? Oftentimes, when we stay angry, we stay trapped. But if we can identify how to give ourselves certain things nowadays, not only do we move away from powerlessness and into feeling powerful, but we don't have to carry around the bitterness anymore. Now, I want to make it clear that this is a step-by-step process and it's not going to change overnight. But I also want to urge you to imagine what life could be like. So let me ask you, which needs and experiences would you like to give yourself that your anger is hiding? And what can you do to meet those needs and create those experiences nowadays? Let me know by dropping a comment below. If you thought this video was useful, then you might like watching this other video.